Definitely humbled and, thankful. We had that conversation just talking about what this might look like, this conversation. And definitely, guys, I don't want this to feel like it's, a presentation or anything like that. Like, I do want this to be conversational, especially since this is on a virtual platform where it makes kind of that connection even more difficult because it's not in person. But if we can, yeah, feel free to, if there's like a question or maybe like a comment in the midst of something that's being said, feel free to stop me and we'll chop it up. But we'll also have some portion at the end of this to do the same thing. So, yeah, man, Jeremy, thank you for letting me know about this opportunity to gather with you guys virtually and be able to connect, man. As you guys were sharing with earlier, my name is Anthony Ramos. I go by ARam. That's my stage name just in regards to music, which is an aspect of the work that I do. And a little bit about myself. Well, it is interesting because I was asked to kind of get on here and share with you guys a little bit about my story. And it wasn't supposed to be like preachy or anything like that. But as I was talking to Jeremy, I kind of thought about like an underlying theme of my story in terms of me in this walk with Christ and thinking about all that God has given me the passions to be about doing. I felt this underlying theme has been about urban mission. And so before I get into it, I just want you to think about like that theme and hopefully through what I share, you can kind of like weave some of those pieces together and how the core of all of this is really to look at ministry in the urban context as a way of this is what the church has been called to do in its natural respect. In the book of John, as Jesus was ascending to heaven, he spoke to his disciples and he told the disciples, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. It is interesting because we categorize missionaries as people that go out overseas and do work and connect with people in different communities and learn their language and their culture to be able to connect with them and share the gospel with them. But we don't see the same work to be done here in our own communities, and so I believe when Jesus said that to the disciples, that as the Father sent me, Jesus, so I send you, the disciples, that he commissioned the entire church to be about missions, whether it's to be overseas or to be in our own neighborhoods. We are called to be missionaries, to be that light. And so I just wanted to piece my story in regards to that, and hopefully that theme comes to light. But the next slide, a little bit about me. I'm 28 years old. I'm married to my wife, Bridney. We have 3 beautiful children. Our daughter, Soriani, she's 7 years old. Our son, Azariah, he is going to be 2 in 3 months. And then our daughter, Jazaniah, she is 4 months officially now. We live in the northeast section of Philadelphia. Well, one of the northeast parts of Philadelphia, Longcrest. We're currently in the process of moving. So you see this storage unit in back of me. It's completely empty, taking down things at home. And so we're going to be moving in the next 2 weeks. And so we're still planning to stay in the area, but we had to get a new home as our family continues to expand. But yeah, so I am a project director at Esperanza. It's located on 5th Street, and it's near Hunting Park. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, Hispanic organization, a nonprofit, faith-based organization in the country, possibly. And yeah, man, it's a great opportunity to see my faith and my passion for working with people in the community come together. I work with projects that deal directly with pastors and building the capacity of youth leaders. One of the things, and I don't want to get too much into it, but one of the things that we found out about youth pastors in the city of Philadelphia, especially those that are working in Hispanic communities, is that there's not one youth pastor that gets paid to do youth ministry work. Where in other areas of the city, more affluent areas, or maybe even other parts of the country, there are specific budgets allocated to youth ministries where a youth pastor would get paid to do youth ministry work. And it just shows, one, the lack of resources that our churches in the city of Philadelphia have, but also there's not a real intentional, I guess, financial allocation from churches for youth ministries. It's really one of those ministries that's kind of put in the back burners, where you have grown-ups that can raise up their own funds to do their work. And then children, everybody loves children. So you would donate to children's causes and VBS and whatnot. But youth ministry, they're kind of like in that weird flux, right? Because you have like young people that might be working, might not be working. Should they donate to the church? And how do they develop a youth ministry budget? And it's really hard. And so you have youth pastors that are working bivocationally, right? Like they probably working full-time, studying full-time, raising families, and then still have to pour into young people in their own congregations with little to no resources. And so one of the things that we do at Esperanza is called our Esperanza Youth Leadership Institute, where we bring together youth leaders all across the city, and then we're venturing out throughout the region, where we would bring youth leaders and their ministries together for a bi-monthly training, and then in between we pair them up with mentors, those that have been serving in the youth ministry for 5+ years, that could share some of the best practices and their experiences with the youth ministers that are involved in our program. We allow them to apply for vocational grants, would allow them to explore ministry, youth ministry, not only as some would see it as a stepping stool for ministry, like into the pastorate, but to see that if they're really called to youth ministry, that they will grow in their gifts and see resources to help them to be effective youth leaders for the long run. And then we also have another grant called the Esperanza Hispanic Ministry Small Grant, where churches can apply for anywhere up to from $500 to $1,000 annually for projects like outreaches, leadership capacity building, where maybe in the budget there's not enough money to go to a conference. They can actually apply for these funds and send leaders to a conference that they might have not been able to if they didn't have the resources. And so that's some of the things that we do. We also do youth civic engagement, where we connect with high school students that are really interested in civics and policy, and we enable them to be able to go speak to their peers about the voting process, to get their peers registered to vote, and encourage them to have an effective voting turnout, to empower them to see that there's power in vote. For whatever reason, we have this like stereotype in our city to believe, or maybe it's across the board, but we believe that people in politics, that they're in these high pedestals and we kind of work for them. But really, it's the other way around. They're getting paid by our tax-paying dollars, and they're in positions to help our neighborhoods, to bring resources to our neighborhoods, and to help us. So it's really the other way around. And how, if you look at it from a city council person's perspective, in a really minuscule level, voting can really affect those in those positions where, let's say, if there's a lot of cracks in streets and maybe like impoverished neighborhoods or school systems, like you bring that up to the city council person and see what's their plan to make effective change in that community. And if it doesn't align up to what the neighborhood is really calling for, the neighborhood can really flex their power to take that individual out of office and support someone that would do that. But we don't really see it at that level. We really think about it from the national perspective. And one of the alarming things is that 81% of the people that we've interviewed, specifically young people, say that their vote doesn't matter because they think at the national level, if they vote and the person that they voted for doesn't make it into the office, then really their voice does not make any change. But if we start to look at it from the real small level, the neighborhood level, we can make a change. And that's when organizing does happen and can really make a ripple effect to the national level. But that's what we do. We educate and enable young people to see their power in their vote and help them to share that with their peers as well. So that's a little bit about the work that I do, but don't want to get too much into that, even though that is a very important hat that I wear in regards to ministry. But I wanted to focus on a little bit more about how I started this walk with Christ and some of the passions that are leading to this underlying theme of urban mission. And so we can go to the next slide. And so, there we go. I'm stuck a little bit. Yeah. So, my walk in Christ began. It's really, it was a search that I had in high school. I actually dropped out of school in 10th grade. And during that period of time, I was really just searching for avenues to just plug in and to fill myself from this void that I had that I didn't realize then. But now, in retrospect, I can realize that I was really just searching, looking for something to fill me. And I was connecting with individuals who smoked marijuana on a regular. And man, I was just in this place where, I was out of school. I was attending a GED program that I thought was going to be good. My whole plan was that I was going to drop out of school, enroll in the GED program, work so I can make money. And I thought I would be set. My mother is a jeweler, and I thought I was going to be a jeweler. So she connected me with one of her friends, her personnels down at City Hall, who had a jeweler spot on Jewelers Road down Samson. And I thought I was going to be a jeweler for the long run. And I end up, getting caught up in just smoking and drinking a lot. And it was one time where my boss, he had two businesses, and I was supposed to open up one of those offices. And I was just so hungover the night before that I made up a lie, and I didn't report, and I ended up getting fired. And so I was out of work. I wasn't studying anymore because the GED place that I was attending was giving out false GEDs, and they actually got closed down later down the road for a gas leakage or something like that. And so I was just really helpless, and so I was just like giving in to just trying to fill myself with this void, man. I didn't know what my purpose would be in life. Again, I was 16 years old, and I even struggled with suicide because I didn't think that my life would amount to anything, right? I'm 16 years old, not working, not studying school. I couldn't see myself out of that slump, and even thoughts of just suicide was running through my head. But it really took my uncle who met the Lord in prison. He came out, and he started mentoring me, man. He started answering a lot of the questions that I had asked in regards to the Bible. And he started pouring into me, started taking me to church. And a lot of it was predominantly in Spanish. And I had really like no strong understanding of the language, even though I'm Hispanic, which is weird, even though now it's much better, thank God. But then, I didn't really understand what the preachers were saying. But what was interesting, I just felt like there was this nudge inside me that if I were to just like turn away from, marijuana, alcohol, like these things that were really just numbing this pain that I had, was phasing my vision. Like if I were to just put that aside and really start to pursue God, then man, I would see something different. And so, I started to see James 4:8 come to life without me even knowing the verse, right? And the verse it says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And so it was in that point, I was like, you know what, God, I don't know what this is like. I don't know what it is like to follow you. I really don't know the Bible. But you know what? I'm going to test this out because everything else I was doing up to this point didn't work. And it looks like my life is going to fall apart. I might as well just try this. And it was just interesting, man, and powerful how I noticed God answering simple prayers of mine very early on in my walk. And I remember, reaching out to my uncle and I'm saying, man, like prayer, like this thing works. Like, he answers even the simplest prayers. And I'm like, man, there's something to this. And, I even had like experiences of just encountering God's presence in profound ways of peace that I just really can't explain. I never found in anything else. I felt so much sorrow and emptiness, right? Like there was times I was kicking in with my guys. We were smoke for night's end, man. And I'll still come home. Like we would laugh the whole time, making jokes and, chopping it up and whatnot. And then I get home and man, I felt so empty. But God's presence, when I experienced that, man, it was just like nothing I could ever pay for to experience. And I felt like God had renewed a purpose within me, gave me a desire to want to aspire for things greater than ever. Because I felt like I was giving 100% of my energy to waste my life away, right? Like throwing it away. And I felt like man, this is a new opportunity to live. Let me do this 100 for God. And man, like how God turned those things around. And I don't get too deep into it, but, you know, I was a high school dropout, but I was able to get my actual GED from Temple. And that happened in 2009. And in 2010, I enrolled into Esperanza College. And so from there, that's where, like, I was just saying, like, God, I'm just going to let you take me wherever this thing goes, you know? And so my desire, even in the midst of all of that, after experiencing what God was doing in my life to show me that he had a purpose for me, man, my whole desire was to communicate that with everyone that I had contact with. And that included my neighbors and friends. And we can go to the next slide. Like, my desire was to share that with them. And so, you know, I had, you know, young guys that I grew up with on I Street, in Ontario. We used to play manhunt in the streets, not flag football in the streets on the concrete, which is weird. Like, I had one of those childhood experiences where we had this huge street we're playing football on, and when we see a car coming, we say, "Hey, the car's coming." Everybody goes to the sides. The cars pass. We get back on the street. We finish the play. It's weird, but that was my upbringing. And so it was these friends that I grew up with. They saw me struggling with marijuana and alcohol and whatnot. But then they also see my conversion. They saw me take on this walk with Christ. And so for me, I had this joy and this passion. I wanted to share that with them. Like, yo, Jesus is real. Like, he's doing this in my life. Let me tell you about it. And we would have these moments of just sitting down and just talking about the Bible and some questions that they had. And though I was very new to these things, I was just sharing things that I've learned. And so to me learning things about the Bible was more than just my own. It was more so like I would connect it with Bible study teachers and stuff like that. So I can go back to the kids in my neighborhood, like, yo, this is what I learned today. And so that was my desire. And so, like, I had a desire to share the gospel with people, because I saw the direct result change that I saw in my own life. And so, and it was to this point where there was this church elder. She saw me sitting down with some of the guys in my neighborhoods, guys tatted up, shorts hanging low and stuff like that. But these are guys that I'm really friends with. We're sitting down, we're just chopping it up. And she passes by, and was interesting. She pulled me up while I was sitting down on somebody's steps. And she told me, she was like, "Hey, don't hang out with these guys too long, or like they're going to rub off on you, like in a negative way." And to me, like, it kind of like blew my mind that something like that would be said from a church elder, especially someone that I looked at. I'm like, man, she really loves God. And she does. She really loves God. Like, God is blessing her. Like, wow, like that's a person to aspire to be like, to have a relationship with Jesus like she does. But then to see her response to viewing my friends that way, it did something inside me. Like, man, this can't be the same Jesus that I read about, because the Jesus that I read about in the Bible, it seems like every person that was on the outskirts, every person that was marginalized, he had a direct response to them, and I felt like that same Jesus was commissioning the church to do the same. And so what was interesting is that when I was finishing up my studies at Biblical Theological Seminary, I was thinking about this book, right, Where the Wild Things Are. And so many of you guys may have seen either the movie, but read the book as a child. Like, this was one of the most popular books for children. It's an award-winning book from Maurice Sendak. And there was this young man by the name of Max. And Max, he was like mischievous. Like, he would run around the house. And there's this word called boisterous, where it's just like you are annoying to like the 10th degree. And the parents of Max ended up sending him to his room. They isolated him because of his behavior. It was interesting is that, I noticed that a lot of people in the church very early on in my faith had a similar response to actions that were different, like Max's parents, right? Like, when we look at individuals that don't look like they belong to the church, or they're unchurched, right? They're not part of like church culture. We sort of stigmatize them, and we remove ourselves from them. And I thought it was very similar, but Max chose to, he ends up in the story, he ends up going to like this fairy tale land where these beasts were at, right? Like these wild beasts, they roamed the land, and, they had claws from a certain animal and beaks, and, and so many claws. Like, it was interesting. Like, they were beasts, they were animals, right? But what's interesting, like the theme that I got from the story is that, Max, he was there, and he was able to relate with them in such a way that I felt like, man, Jesus, in the same sense, like if we look at it, Jesus was also where the wild things are, right? Like, there was so many times in biblical stories where there was people that he wasn't supposed to, by the culture, be seen with, right? Like the woman at the well, like she's a woman, that's one. In Jewish customs at that time, no man was supposed to be seen in public with a woman, right? And then and that term, she was also a Samaritan woman. Like, she was a person of mixed blood, and there was like hatred between the Jewish people and the Samaritans, because the Jewish people thought Samaritans were like, how could I say it in a proper term, but it's like how we would look at it as a mutt. Like, it's not a pure breed, right? And so it was interesting. But not only she was a woman, she was also Samaritan. But Jesus, on his way, I don't know if this was to Jerusalem, but he was on his way. He made a specific emphasis to meet this woman at the well, when he could have taken a quicker route to go around Samaria. He actually went through it so he can have a direct encounter with this woman. And so when I look at like Jesus responding to people on the outskirts and marginalized in scripture, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, like that's Jesus's heart. And if we are followers of Jesus, then we should be doing similarly, right? And so to me, I couldn't understand it, why people in the church would look at unchurched people that way, right? Like, it's weird that we would even have to categorize them as unchurched. Like, what does that mean? Like, I have a brother-in-law, he has tattoos, he's in the military and whatnot, but he's a believer. And I remember him going out to some churches here in Philadelphia, and when he would go out there, automatically some of the pastors and the leaders would bring him up to the altar, and they would think that he's a new convert, like he did not know a lick of the gospel, which is a stereotype and is a stigma, just because he didn't fit the church culture of what they expected a person to look like if they knew Christ, right? Which is very weird. And similarly, I had another experience where friends of mine, it was a church service, an evangelist, came to the service to speak to people about the gospel. And everyone was dressed in their Sunday best, but these two individuals, they weren't. And they were asked to come to the front and accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. Now, mind you, they've committed to following Jesus a whole month ago, prior to that event. And so to me, like, it's just moments like that is just like perplexing. Like, wow, like, there's like this there's like this stereotype of like church people. If you're following Jesus, you got to look like this, you got to walk like this, and you kind of like have to shun away people that look different or act different. And to me, like, I've always had that heart. Like, Jesus was so interested in me. I was a wild thing, and so if that was the case in my life, then I know for a fact that I have to go share that with other people, even if the institutional church is against doing that. And so to me, like, growing up in North Philadelphia, I saw a ministry that was able to do that at an amazing level, where they were able to connect with young people right at their level, at their place of interest, and be able to share the gospel in ways that young people can pick that up. And so I really want to talk a little bit about Timoteo, right? So I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Timoteo, but I do have like a 60-second clip of kind of like talking about what that ministry is. I don't know if Jeremy, on your end, you can play that. Should be a link directed from YouTube. There we go. Could you guys hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
Okay, I can't either.
What does Timoteo mean to me? Me personally, it means family, it means unity.
So what I love most about Timoteo is just the work that we do within the community, impacting these kids, changing their lives.
Timoteo mean a lot. It helped me stay off the streets. Like, not only was it football, but it was something like a mentor. Like, I looked at it as like a neighborhood fraternity.
I have been involved with Timoteo for so long because I believe in the work that it's doing with our inner city kids. I've seen the transformation that it brings about in the young people's lives.
If Timoteo didn't exist, I don't know where my son Joshua would be at right now. He loves football so much, and he's coming to the Lord right now, so that's amazing.
Just to be able to connect with so many different people is one of the greatest gifts ever bestowed upon me as a young guy.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's kind of Timoteo in a nutshell. Really short, 60 seconds. Yeah, man. So Timoteo, when I came across it, it was it's an organization that looks to connect with young people via sports, and so they do have a flag football program, but they also have a basketball program. They also run summer camps where younger kids can be mentored by the mentees of the other programs. But I thought it was a great opportunity to connect with young people, especially coming out to some of those practices very early on, where 80% of the young people that were involved in this program didn't have their father in their lives. And so a lot of the guys that were, leading as coaches, as mentors, were serving a very similar role in that person's life. To be able to be a role model to some of these young men that don't have a fatherly figure to help them and guide them. And so to me, I saw that, and I fell in love with that way of doing ministry, right? Like, just some of these young guys, it's just like, man, this is sports. I love sports. Let me connect. Let me play flag football because I love football. Let me just play. To me, like, I saw that program, and I'm like, our emphasis really was to connect with these young people and help make an impact with, like, their personality, but also, like, their spiritual formation. And that was the emphasis of the program. And, whatever happened on the field or on the court, like, that would be secondary. But the emphasis was really to create a relationship with these young guys. And it takes time. Like, I remember the first time that one of the guys that I mentored came to our church, and that was about 3 years in. I served as a chaplain for the Seahawks in Timoteo, and it was really year 3 when I started to see some of the guys that we've poured into actually start to come to church. After in the beginning, which was interesting, we would think like, man, you're pouring into them, they're automatically going to come to church. And maybe some of the people in churches, they have that false stereotype as well. But it's really about lasting relationships. And even if they don't ever decide to come to a church or anything like that, would you still be willing to, develop that friendship and that relationship with that individual, that hopefully over time, they can see God's impact in your life in that relationship. And so to me, I thought that it was an amazing avenue to be able to connect with young guys who have little to no interest in being able to sit down in a church pew and hear the gospel message. And so to me, I thought that this was an amazing program. And I still believe it's an amazing program to be able to connect with young guys. And so I was able to connect with them back in 2015. And it's just been amazing, just the amounts of individuals. There's guys that are now in college, graduating college, they're working, going to college. And you continue to have these relationships even after the program. After they age out, you continue to have those relationships with them. Maybe down the line they need help with their driving exam. They need help with finding documentation for, their social security cards, finding a job and stuff like that. They have an issue with a girlfriend that they want to talk to you about. If there's an issue at the home and they might need a place to stay or something like that. So it's just, it allows you to build that relationship with that young person where they can confide in you, and you can start to help them in their formation and help them grow as a young man, and help them to be, great contributors in society and stuff like that. And so to me, I looked at this and it's mentorship, like communicated across the board in the program, but it's discipleship. And that's what it is being able to, pour into someone that is younger than you, and whether it's by age or experience, and share that experience with them as they continue to help and form as an individual. And so that was the objective as coaches and mentors, is to help their formation. And the success on the field and the courts would be secondary. And the way that we would want to see those things done is that we would make an emphasis, whether it be to intentionally implement these spiritual practices with the young men. So whether it be Bible studies at homes with these guys, one of the things that Zeke's on here, we've done Bible studies in our homes, where we would have days that we would meet on the field and we would cover a verse there, but then there would be days that they would come to our house and we would break down a verse with them. And you'll be really intentional, because if you just be upfront and say hey guys, we're gonna have Bible study at our house, the majority of the guys won't just show up. But if you say hey, you're gonna review our game tape, we're gonna have some pizza, and we're gonna talk about the verse for the week, the guys will show up, and we would intentionally talk about the scripture, and we would talk about some life applications, things that we've experienced as coaches, and be able to share with them, and have some hard conversations with them at times as well. But to me, I feel like this is an amazing avenue, programs like this, to be able to connect with young guys in the inner city, again, where the majority of these young men don't have father figures in their lives, or figures that are consistent in their lives. A lot of these guys come from impoverished neighborhoods, but it's an amazing program to be able to, if you want to be able to reach young people that are on the outskirts and marginalized, and I feel like that is what the gospel is really about, is being able to connect with people that otherwise wouldn't be a beneficiary of these things. I think that's an emphasis. You have to connect with these guys, and connect with people that are hurt systemically. And to me, that's where I felt like a lot of my energy and emphasis have been poured into, is to pour into these young men in ministry. And you can go to the next slide. And then another emphasis is looking at connecting with young people through the medium of music. I remember first, becoming a Christian, I had this whole conflict, thinking that there was no way that I was able to do hip hop in a church. It was looked at as awful. You already heard about my encounter with an elderly person of, talking with someone who didn't look the church type. Imagine going up in front and spitting some bars in front of the church. They're going to be what are you doing? But to me, I had to wrestle with that. But I felt after I shared, I ended up doing a 16 bar verse, and I shared it with somebody, and it was really just a thank you note to God, hey God, thank you for looking out for me when I wasn't even looking for you. It was kind of like a thank you verse, and I shared it with somebody, and it brought them to tears, and I'm wow, okay, maybe there's something here. And after some time and being able to connect with people through music, I feel like this was an amazing opportunity again to be able to connect with people that don't necessarily have an interest in the gospel, and would be able to connect with my music because of the platform, right? It is hip hop. And I felt like I was able to engage with them. And so my music really early on was to share with them my experience, how God was transforming my life, this, that, and the third. But I felt like also through the years, as I continue to mature in my walk, my music has changed as well. That it was an intentional to be able to create music that resonate even with people, specifically young people. That was my target, young people and young adults. That's continuing to be my target in my music. But I would create music that would resonate to them, that even if they aren't Christian, or even if they don't have an affiliation of faith or whatever, they can listen to my music and they're like, wow, this is good music, like it's quality music. But my hope is that even in the midst of that music, they can hear the message that I'm trying to pour out to them, which is really to help people realize their God-given purpose and to walk in that, and to be inspired by that. And I hope that through my music and the way that I display my life, that it would be that communicational tool. And so really, like, music, the way that I looked at it, as well as the mentoring platform, it's really the hooks, right? Like, football was the hook, music is the hook, but the main emphasis, the centrality, the underlining theme of Urban Mission is to really introduce them to the gospel. And so that was always the hope, is that through these avenues, they would be able to connect with Christ. And so my emphasis was always to meet people at the margins, even people that are considered to be wild for whatever reasons, but that's always been the emphasis. And so that's a little bit about my story. I hope I wasn't too presentationally, but it's just ways that you can connect. I am on social media, Instagram, Facebook. My music, it's on all streaming platforms. But yeah, man, I'm just, just a guy here in Philadelphia that's trying to connect with our young people, make a lasting difference in them, and also try to empower some of our leaders that are doing the same, by sharing some resources that I came across. And yeah, man, just trying to make a difference like you guys. So, but yeah, man, Jeremy, thank you, man.
Yo, that was legit. I'm sure we got questions and all that, but can I just play one song? Like this is and then, it's really creative. It's different, you got like an interesting style on it. It's got.
Yeah, oh yeah. Sleeping, still yeah. I'm on the move, nomad. I'm on the move out the way, Snorlax. Move out the, can't stop. All gas, can't face, no lag. Hallway, no pass. Snooze on, Snorlax. Y'all gon' wake as I go past. Inbound, toe tap, can't stop. All gas, slept on, quick nap. Snooze on, Snorlax. Indeed, I am on the move, fulfilling the plan that was destined for me to do. Not getting comfortable, cause if I'm complacent, I'm missing what's memorable. Really set out to prove that my father was wrong and I'm just not another dude. Thought I'd be doped in a jar, mother raising his mountain. This son, there is nothing new. Nah, we are not the same. Cut from a different cloth, stop the plane. You and I black if you clog the lane. You are not stopping me. I don't see your vision halting me. I will progress through this properly, muted the mockery. Know who I got up inside of me. How do you gauge success as a living lavish? Show you gain respect. Flying on your flick, you shave the checks. You pay to flex. What aim is that? Catching you dipping. JP is singing again. Fuji provided the flute, playing the tune. I play it to wake up the friends. I'm here to the end. But drive is still intact. 2020 still my year. Not living in fear. Passed all my worries to God. He the one who take care of my kids. I'm not in despair. Really do mean what I say. So figure I say what I mean. No lines in between. Practice to live what I say and say what I live. It is what it is. On the move, nomad. I'm on the move out the way. Snorlax. Move out the. Can't stop. All gas. Game face. No lag. Hallway. No pass. Snooze on. Snorlax. Y'all gon' wake as I go past. Inbound. Toe tap. Can't stop. All gas. Slept on. Quick nap. Snooze on. Snorlax. Leveled up. Me and the team have been gaining XP. Not compromising our health. Max portion in hand. Life in full. How we like our XP. Yeah. I wanna be all that is stated for me. You can snooze if you choose. Yet I choose to improve. not being stopped on the route of 13. You can go and doubt me, but there's not enough of you would know about me. Cannot write me off, Texas so it's down and put a ditto. Maybe you should go and copy. Forced to be reckoned with, no cosign. Got already seconded, making team rocket retreat. Having the blast off the scene, them haters relent again. It's true, I got a cold sound, so ain't no way around this, yeah. On my way to Old Town Road, think you would've got this, yeah. Check, I am not regular, there's a little something that's extra. Shiny don't hit with the transfer. Tell me how you wanna measure us. Ruler of heaven's ahead of us. It's true, I got a cold sound, so ain't no way around this, yeah. On my way to Old Town Road, think you would've got this, yeah. Check, I am not regular, there's a little something that's extra. Shiny don't hit with the transfer. Tell me how you wanna measure us. Ruler of heaven's ahead of us. I'm on the move, no mad. I'm on the move out the way, Snorlax. Move out the, can't stop. All gas, game face, no lag. Hallway, no pass. Snooze on, Snorlax, 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 Snorlax. Y'all gon' wait as I go past. Y'all gon' wait as I go past. Inbound, toe tap, can't stop. All gas, slept on, quick nap. Snooze on, Snorlax.
Good stuff, bro.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
And you got a whole what do you call that? Discography, you know? You got a whole.
Oh yes. Yeah, so it's really just beginning. You know, I had a project back in 2014, a small mixtape project. Back then in 2014, Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff wasn't out yet. But it's you can find that on SoundCloud. But then life changed. You know, I enrolled in my master's program, ended up getting married, had children. And so it was just like no time really to create. And so I felt like at the end of 2019, there was this nudge to kind of get back to writing and to sharing via that platform. And here we are in 2020, was able to release a couple singles already. And so the hope is that throughout this year, I'll continue to lay out some new singles and see where it goes. So far, you know, it's been gaining some good traction. So hopefully in 2021, I can drop a project or something like that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I really like it.
Thanks, man.
I also say it really fits your personality. Like you've got this like drive and positivity. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing. You guys, I definitely got questions, but anybody else want to jump in first before I kind of throw out some questions for Anthony or like just to engage?
Yeah, I want to let's give a round of applause for that great presentation. Let's go. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No. I don't know if it was funny because I was talking. I had some similar views last week. I was talking to Jeremy, so I'm not sure if he just picked you out of the group because we talked about some last week, but everything pretty much what you were saying about not looking like the rest of the majority of Christians, you know, and people would kind of they got shun you because you don't look like everybody else, you know, it kind of bothered me a little bit, you know, but that's something I'm still trying to figure out, you know, and try not to be so resentful towards.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm just I guess I'm encouraged by, you know, just other people having similar views and following Christ or being led to Christ through similar views, you know. And also wanted to comment on playing football in the street. And that's something I did too. You know, we used to play tackle in the street.
Yeah.
Not safe.
I don't know who thought it was. I don't know who started it and thought it was okay to do that, but I mean, we just did it.
Yeah. God bless you, brother, man. I'm very encouraged by your walk with God and everything you said, man. That's pretty much all I have to say. God bless you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, man, and to go to your point, man, about that, yeah, man, I had tons of church hurt that I had to deal with because of those same things, right? We feel like we're reading the same Bible. Why are we coming to the same conclusion? Why are we shunning people who are created in God's image, regardless how they look from the exterior? You know, if they're even having a conversation with you, there's some level of interest that they want what you have. Why do we feel like we have to, bring them up to a platform, dress them up a certain way for them to be accepted in the church when it's not like that in anywhere in scripture, So definitely a lot of church hurt that I had to kind of like weave through. But to me, like when I thought about it, it's just like, man, like there's no person, no pastor, no leader that has a heaven or hell to send anyone to. Like that's fully only Christ, and that belongs to God alone. And so to me, like I didn't want to harbor like that hurt and that pain, that resentment, and really just turn my efforts into like, this is what God has placed in me. It might not be a vision for anyone else, and I can't be upset that everyone else don't see it that way. But I know this is what God has given me. Let me be responsible for that. That's the only thing that I can really control. And so I just turned that energy, right? It's kind of like when Jesus came into the temple and he saw them selling stuff in the temple where they should have been praying. He took out the belt and started whipping them out of there. So taking that energy and then like putting it to my drive to really connect with people that I felt like God has put in my heart to connect with. So, but man, I appreciate those comments, man. Thank you, man.
Of course, man. No problem, man. No problem.
Yeah, I think one thing that you said, and feel free to anyone else to jump in, but one thing you said that I think is going to resonate with a lot of us is like just finding that hook or find a way to connect to people, because we're all made some way to connect with people, and I mean, not everybody's thing is music. I mean, I heard two things from you: music and sports, right? Or like maybe music, sports, words, I guess, like lyrics, like you're good with words, or you're good with like, but sorry. Finding a way to connect with people because we're created to do that.
Yeah.
You like that it's a deeper connection where you're kind of hoping that they can see Christ or see God in you through that. And yeah, I don't even know what my question is. I mean, but I see that, and I think that that's like something that is kind of like what we're all supposed to do. Figure out that way that we're supposed to, that we're made to sort of influence. I guess what I appreciate about your music or your stuff is like you're very aware that God has called you to influence people.
Yeah.
Like even the fact that you're sharing your story very honestly.
Yeah.
This is what happened when I was in 10th grade, whatever. Like you're called to like use everything about who you are to influence people, and I think that probably a lot of us, I mean, myself for sure, but the rest of us too, trying to figure out what is my way of influencing people, in some way to see Jesus. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know if you can get a question from that. I don't have a question, but.
Well, no, what stirred is there's a quote. So I remember early on in my walk, one of the pastors that poured into my life, he gave me a book, and actually let me pull it up right here. Never mind, I packed it. I packed my whole library. It's called Leadership 101. And I remember him writing a quote to me in the front of the book, and what he said was that that influence is one of the key aspects of leadership. And he identified that influence that I had, and it was really because there was a lot of young people. I remember early on in my walk, a lot of the young people from the church wanted to connect with me, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And I remember at one point they appointed me as a Bible study teacher, and it was for like preteens. And I'm in this room with preteens that were, pretty much birthed in the church. Like they grew up in the church. And I'm like, they know more of the Bible than I do. And I'm here teaching them. But I remember that inspired me to look the scriptures and study more so I can be able to share with them and feel comfortable. Because I remember there was so many times like I would go up and present in front of them. And I'm like, they're going to ridicule me. They're going to eat me alive because I feel like they know the Bible more than I do. But one thing that fear never took away was the power of influence. Like that was there. And so Nipsey Hussle said the same thing, man, that's the greatest thing that you can give to somebody is to be able to have the power to influence them to do something good. And so I think every one of us has influence, and we have to hone in on what are those avenues to be able to connect with people, to do such a thing. But yeah, man, I believe that's a powerful tool to be able to connect with people is through influence, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank God for Nipsey Hussle.
Thank God for Nipsey Hussle, for sure.
What about you guys, Zeke or Jordan or Marquise, if you got any other questions? I definitely have them. I don't want to hog it, so.
No, I don't have no question. I know Anthony. I think I know when he first started coming to church, he started going to a church I grew up in, and so I know that he always had something about himself, gift, some talent, and you know how some people, it takes them a while when they come to the Lord, and it just takes them a while. But he seemed like a kid who just got it right away. You know what I mean? And even though he was younger, you know, I looked up to him a lot, man. He's a great kid. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that didn't bother me to tell people that I looked up to him, saw greatness in him, man. Even though he's about 12 years younger than me. And so, just to see him doing his thing, his music, his family, it's just a blessing, and just to continue to do what he's doing, honor God, and just don't let no one stop me, not the church, no one. And so, yeah, just to keep it up.
Appreciate you, my guy.
Yo, there's a lot going on, bro. I'm curious. You don't have to go too deep, but like, because you're sharing a little bit, like, in terms of even, you know, church hurt, or you've been hurt, you know, or you've had hurdles. You know?
Yeah.
You can tell you've been driven, like almost like what Zeke was saying. You could tell that you were driven right away. You know, when you're like once you came to Jesus, you're like, bam, I'm going. You know, because like I don't see a lot of people that like 10th grade, GED, you know, high school drop, whatever, and then man, like Jesus, and then you're like, bam, you know. So like, I wonder if you could share something about that, like, especially like if you, because I know to be driven, you've hit hurdles, like obstacles, whether just internally in yourself, like being not motivated, or other people, or like you already talked about like that the church woman, and you talk about some of the church hurt and some of the stuff. But how did you saw that stuff, and how did you push past that? You know?
Yeah. So I guess specifically to your second point of the question in regards to like being able to push past that, like, yeah, man, I remember there was another instance, and I'll just share this for the sake of the conversation. Like, I knew there was something wrong with the structure of church culture when I felt like I would do a disservice to bring someone who was at least what we would call a Bible friendly. And a Bible friendly is someone that is intrigued with scripture enough that they would even attempt to go to a church because you invited them, because you've had relationship with them, you already had some conversation with them. And so to me, I felt like it came to a point where there was a point in time where I would do a disservice to the person if I would have brought them to the church that I was attending at the time. Because they would have gone to the church and they're like, yeah, I'm being judged by leadership because of how I look, how I dress. I'm not going to receive Jesus the way that you're telling me I can be able to receive him. I can connect with him because he says to come the way that I am. Yeah. And so to me, like that, I felt like there was something wrong. There was something wrong there where like, man, I can't bring someone who wants to know about Jesus to a place where that's all they do. Like, it's to talk about Jesus, worship Jesus. Like, I can't bring them there because then they won't be as interested. Like, that's where I knew that there was something that was wrong. But it's kind of like what I was saying with Marquise. Like, yeah, like I know, like, I could either spend the rest of my years trying to fight that battle with leadership to help them see that vision, right? I can be like that prophet. It's kind of like being Jeremiah, right? 40 years of ministry and not seeing one person convert. They called him the weeping prophet for a reason. Like he would sit there and weep in front of everyone and no conversions for 40 years, right? But his sole mission was to help people realize the way that they were seeing things was wrong. And so either I could have shifted my focus to be like that, like my main mission in life is to help people see ministry this way, or I can actually do what I sense God is calling me to do, right? That same passion, that same vision, I would go and operate that. And if other people don't choose to see it that way, I can't do anything about that, because I can't change their perspective. Only by, how I live and do those things, hopefully there could be a change. But I can't really go inside them and shift their way of thinking. It can only happen through time and experience. And so I chose the latter, right? Because the former would have made me, like, that would have been the gist of my ministry, is to help convince people to love people that Jesus loves, and I felt like that's a long hill battle, even as crazy as that sound, right? To help people who love Jesus to understand that Jesus loved people. Like, to me, that's kind of like, it's super ironic, but it's an uphill battle for some people, especially in some institutions that struggle with that reality, right? Like, that don't know how to engage with people who are on the outskirts, that are marginalized, that don't have any church background. There's a sense of like skepticism and like fear of being able to engage them. And so, like, I didn't think like that. I didn't want to waste my energies doing that, but I wanted to engage in that. And so that's why I made, like, my emphasis really is to kind of like be like an urban missionary in a sense, right? Like, to plug in more with church, with community-based organizations that was connecting with young people at a real grassroots level, such as Timoteo. And because its ministry is not looked at as ministry, at least by some churches, but it's ministry, right? It's connecting with young people at real levels that, these young people don't have a particular interest of being able to hear Jesus in the church pews, but would listen if you have a relationship with them, because they see you come into practices and stuff like that every once in a while, and so I felt like that was my emphasis, and music as well, like being able to create content to be able to engage with people, and hopefully make an impact that way through music. And so even though some people in church institutions might look down on hip hop in that way, but yeah, that was kind of my drive. Yeah,
I heard this term someone the other day. This other pastor in Fairhill, his name is Juan Marrero. I don't know if you met him, but he called it an indigenous missionary. I'm like, yo, so you're an indigenary. I mean, you I mean, I guess a lot of people wouldn't want to see where you grow up. You just say, this is my neighborhood. That's just it. I grew up here, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think what he was describing, he said indigenary, and I'm like, that's how you see yourself. Right? I came to know Christ here, and I want to go back and help people know Christ.
Definitely. Yep. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, you're a multi-talented individual. I love that you're really trying to use your whole life to bear witness to Christ. That's, I mean, for me, I will say, like Zeke, I don't know if I'm really older than you. I mean, I'm probably around the same age. Yeah, a little bit older than you, but yeah, I mean, I look up to you as well in terms of seeing how you kind of live your life, trying to be faithful witness in the way you live. And so I'll say one of the reasons I like to try to bring people in to connect with the of us who especially when we were meeting in person as a group, trying to chop it up and having more people, is just kind of like this idea of like, we need to know who's in our community and who's trying to do stuff. Like, for example, you're talking about like the voting stuff and all these initiatives you guys do. Like, we should know that. We should be connected to each other in this way, outside of only our own really little group, our own church, our own small, whatever you call them, whatever. Because if we care about our community, we ought to know who else cares about the community in the same way, and find ourselves sort of learning from each other. So that's the kind of, I always try to encourage this kind of style of like, pursue those conversations. Especially, I know some people that are connected to our young adult that really care about music. Like, you connect with Anthony, like I'm sure I'm just looking at that video you made, right? Like there's like the animation, like there's stuff behind that, right? Like I'm sure you've got like a recording studio or people that how to help you produce stuff. Like, but I know that there's going to be people that want to do the similar stuff, so it's like, figure it out, right? We got to be connected with that, right? So.
Definitely. No, thank you, Jeremy. And I know that this is one of the mediums that you use, but to be able to connect with people, I think that's been something that you made an emphasis on, like being able to connect leaders with other leaders, to share resources, to help dream together. I feel like that's something that the Lord specifically placed in you to be able to help cultivate that effort, man.
I'm gonna say one last thing. I don't know if you guys want to connect, but Jordan's going to Cairn this fall.
Oh, dope.
But he's doing music stuff. So, I don't remember exactly what program.
Hey, Marquise.
Oh yeah, what's up? It's Marquise. Stop the recording now.